Hello and welcome to the Sight and Sound Video History Series of the Toledo-Lucas County Public Library. I'm Tom Walton. Today we have the pleasure of talking with a woman who is very much a part of the wonderful Latino heritage of our city. Toledo's Latino community enriches us all, and our guest, Maria Rodriguez-Winter, has been at the heart of it for many years, working toward inclusiveness but also maintaining a strong personal sense of pride in the Latino culture. And Maria, it's a delight to have some time with you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I call you Maria?
Yes, you may.
Let's talk a little bit about your childhood as we begin. Where were you born?
I was actually born in a small town in Texas called Crystal City, Texas. And my sister also was born there, so there were two of us born in that area.
Crystal City, Texas. I suppose the obvious question, and that was in 1949?
That was in 1949. It's a town about 35 miles from the border, close to Piedras Negras, Mexico, and about, I would say, an hour and a half to 2 hours from San Antonio.
So maybe the obvious question is, how did you get from Crystal City to Toledo?
Correct. Well, my parents, my father's family, migrated to the north for years, helping out the farmers. And there was a migrant route that people took from the south to help out the farmers in the north. They would follow the crops. And when he married my mother, she came along as well. And her background was that she had been born in Texas but raised in Mexico. And so her training had been in nursing. And so when she went on these migrant trips with my father, she thought it was fabulous because she'd never had an opportunity to travel as much. So she really enjoyed herself. But when my brother reached the age of school age, she said, we cannot be traveling like this anymore. We must find a place to stay. And so they explored West Virginia with my grandfather. My grandfather, her father, was living there and worked in the mines in West Virginia in the Moundsville area. Mm-hmm. My dad didn't like working underground, and so they did find a place in Ohio, in Wauseon, and he ended up working for New York Central Railroad. He loved working outside, and so he spent 35 years with the railroad system. So I grew up there.
Mm-hmm. If we can go back to Crystal City for just a moment, can you remember your first home?
I actually don't remember my first home because when my brother was 5, I was 2. And so they decided to live here when
So your earliest memories are
of Wauseon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wauseon, Pettisville. I actually went to Pettisville High School. We lived in a rural part on Route 2.
You mentioned your mother, and it was Margarita Martinez Rodriguez.
Correct.
Your father was Santos. Mm-hmm. Both sound to me like the work ethic was part of who they were. Is that right?
Right. They were very, very strong. They had a real strong sense of work. And my mother used to take us out in the summers from the time I was around 6 or 7 years old, and we would go and work and help the farmers pull weeds and pick tomatoes. And I remember being 10 years old and hardly being able to pick up a bushel of tomatoes. I'd have to have others help me carry it to the side. But yeah, we used to work in the summer times doing all of that.
That was very common, wasn't it, for families who followed the crops north, as your family did, for the children to pitch in, to get out there
Correct.
in the fields and work and
Correct.
pick tomatoes and soybeans, whatever the crop might have been.
Right.
That was just part of the culture, right?
It was part of the culture.
Expected of the children.
Exactly. And it was also expected that you gave your money to your parents. They portioned out what you could spend. And as we grew older, my mother said, all you're going to do is give me $5 a week for gas. The remainder is yours. If you choose to squander it, you will have no new school clothes. You will have no new things. Your responsibility is to buy your own stuff.
She taught you the value of
She
money
taught us the
and
value of money.
saving.
Correct.
Yeah. How much did you earn in the fields?
I would say over the summer, I probably made somewhere in the area of $300 to $400.
Was it per hour?
Oh, per hour? No, no, no.
Per basket? Per bushel?
It was 12 cents a bushel.
Yeah. So it took a while to
It took a
build
long
that.
while. It took hours. It took an
Gave you an
entire day to
appreciation.
make a couple of dollars.
Can you describe the working conditions? Most of us who will be watching our conversation can't imagine being stooped over, picking beans or whatever it might be for 8, 10, 12 hours at a time. Can you talk about that?
It was relatively hard. My mother always made sure that we wore long sleeves and wore hats, and so we were protected from the sun. The most difficult thing for us was where to go to the bathroom, you know, and being young and being somewhat scared of like who's going to be watching. It was, you know, it was a little difficult, but fortunately some of the farmers had cornfields, and we'd go and hide in the cornfields. So that was really difficult. It was difficult also to lift up some of the
Sure.
produce that had to be taken to the side. But we were together as a family. We would sing, we would tell jokes. We always had our lunch break with our tortillas and beans. And so time seemed to pass. It was hard work, but it was honest work. And my dad always used to say, there's nothing wrong with working hard, but you have to make a choice. People who have education don't work like this. So if you choose not to go to school and not to finish and not to go on to college, that's your choice. But know that this is an honorable job, it should never be put down, but you have very few choices in life if you choose not to get an education.
What incredible lessons your parents taught you, both your mom and your dad. Did you come to realize at that early age that farm workers were not always treated fairly? That not all farmers were as concerned about perhaps the welfare of the people who worked for them?
Yes, yes. I really became aware of some of the farmers who would apply pesticides while we were working, flying overhead. And my mother always used to say, cover your faces, because she always made sure that we also had like a hanky. So we would cover our noses with it. But I was very conscious that, you know, how could they do that while we're working? Could they choose another day to do it? And then there were some times when they were not pleased with the way we pulled weeds, and so they chose not to pay us. And so I thought that was a little unfair.
I should say, after all those hours of labor. Were you an English-speaking family at that point, or did you grow up speaking exclusively Spanish?
In my household, we spoke Spanish. In school, we spoke English. So when I first started school, I spoke no English. And so it took me a couple of years to really be able to catch up.
This is in Pettisville?
This was in Pettisville.
How did you absorb the lessons that were being delivered by your teachers when it's in a foreign language to you?
Yes, I think just observing, keeping a keen eye on watching other children and observing what the teacher was doing and trying to copy the same things, and then over time it begins to sink in.
Can you tell us about your elementary school years? This was at Pettisville Elementary?
Pettisville Elementary School.
And were you in the company of a lot of other Latino children who also worked in the fields and also had troubles with English?
Well, actually, in my class there were about 20 students, and I was the only Latina in my class. There were 2 other boys that were Latino in my class. And so it was a little difficult for me to get acclimated and to also develop relationships, because the community in which I grew up was very Germanic and Mennonite. And as you know, some of the Mennonite customs is to be very closed, and so we were somewhat separated
It's
by that.
probably easy for a child to misunderstand that culture, the Mennonite culture. And did you feel shunned a bit?
Oh yes, I did.
And teased, perhaps?
And teased and shunned, and I do recall coming home and crying because I was teased because of the color of my skin, and began to feel really bad about that. And my mother was quite an insightful woman. She used to say, a daughter, the word in Spanish is MECHA. So she said, daughter, take a look around you. When the ladies grow up, when the girls grow up, they set out in their bathing suits in the sun to turn brown because they think it makes them more beautiful. God already gave you that color. You don't have to go out into the sun. You are naturally beautiful. So don't ever think that the color of your skin is something to feel bad about. It's something to be proud of.
What a wonderful lesson. And then eventually moved on to Pettisville High School, is that right?
Right.
Had things changed a little bit for the better by high school?
I think so. I think that my friends were a little more receptive. Perhaps their worldview had changed some, and weren't so influenced by their parents. And so there were, certainly times when I had good times with them, going to restaurants and different entertainment. I do have to say that the school was run by Mennonites, so it was very conservative. We were not allowed to wear slacks to school, only dresses. And of course, some of my friends still had really long hair. You could not wear makeup. And of course, some of the Mennonite girls still wore the little hat that they have to put on in their hair. And I did also go to school with some Quakers. So it was pretty conservative.
You graduated from Pettisville High School in what year?
In 1968.
And what was your plan at that point? Did you have one?
I did. Actually, I planned to go into nursing. My mother had been a nurse, and she really was encouraging that I do that. I was part of the nursing club at Pettisville, and so I came to Toledo, worked myself through in a factory and saved enough money to pay for the school. It was called the Northwest Ohio Practical Nurse Training Center. And so after graduation, I did get accepted, and I did go through that, and did my pre-clinicals here in Toledo, and then in Wauseon, Detweiler Hospital, I did my clinical training. So I graduated, I believe, in 1969.
Did you go to work as a nurse at that point?
I did. I went to work at St. Vincent's Hospital. I worked at Planned Parenthood and several other some nursing homes in the area, and so I did. And then I found a job directing a neighborhood health clinic called the Guadalupe Family Health Clinic, and that's when I met my husband.
That's Dwayne.
My current husband, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And ultimately, though, you went on to the University of Toledo.
I did.
Why that sort of career change at that point?
I really was interested in getting a degree, a 4-year degree. Being a licensed practical nurse was a 1-year training, and so I really was interested in education. I've always had a curious mind. And so I studied, I thought maybe I'd want to study law, so I did get into political science, and then I discovered through my participation in the political process that that's really not something that I wanted to do. I didn't find that politics was honest. And, I had this idealized view that it was just black and white, it was the good, but I soon found out there were a lot of gray areas in politics.
Oh, yes.
And so I just decided that was not for me. But I really learned a lot.
Your major was political science
My
at
major
UT?
was political science.
And did you get that 4-year degree?
I did.
It took some time.
It took me 10 years.
Again, you had other responsibilities.
I had other responsibilities. I had been married, 2 children, had a divorce, and was directing a neighborhood health clinic, was raising 2 children on my own, and so I had lots and lots of responsibilities, plus paying for my own way through college.
Now, while you were in college at the University of Toledo, you helped create a Latino organization, and you have to forgive me here because I am not going to say this correctly. I'm going to try it though. Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano hacia Aztlán. Close?
Pretty close.
Okay.
Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán.
There you go. And translated means?
It is a movement of Chicano students
Okay.
of Aztlán.
What motivated you to help establish that?
I'd been working in the summertime with Rudy Lira at the time, working with helping to improve the lives of the migrant workers, and I really felt that there was a need for more Latinos being educated. And as I was at the university, I saw very few, and so I thought, well, I'm going to see what I can do about starting an organization, but how do I do it? And I found through an article in Rudy's office that there was an organization in California called Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán. And I called him up, and called the leader up, and I said, how can I do something like this? He says, first you have to gauge whether or not there's enough people to help you get it started. And so he suggested, and I followed through with putting up posters all over the university and inviting people of Latino descent to come to explore the possibility of an organization. And to my surprise, there were about 15 who showed up. And
To your surprise, you mean you expected more or fewer?
I expected fewer.
Okay.
Because I hadn't seen any. So I was really, really pleasantly surprised to see that many there. And we created a mission and vision and set about the business of making an organization, which later became institutionalized and recognized on campus. And for years it was called MECHA, and then later it transformed to Latino Student Union.
And what was its mission?
Its mission was to bring the Latino community and the university community together to increase the number of Latinos on campus. Because many people felt that the ivory tower was just unreachable. And so by working with the people in the community and inviting them to come through the various dances we would hold on campus as fundraisers, by inviting them to come on campus, it made it so that the university was more accessible to them.
Now, you went on to get your degree over 10 years, as you say, in political science. A lot of folks who think you would have been an excellent public servant. Did you ever consider running for public office, city council perhaps, representing your part of Toledo?
I really hadn't thought about that because early on, as I was studying political science, I saw that in order to be a politician, there had to be a lot of compromises. And I felt that at that time in my life, I was too rigid and couldn't compromise some of the values. I had opportunities to go to Washington, D.C. In one of my jobs to do some lobbying, and discovered there that there was just so much corruption that it just tainted my view.
What are some of the values that you found so difficult to compromise?
One was being honest.
That could be a problem in Washington.
It was a big, and I really believe in honesty, and I believe in justice, and I believe in serving the poor. And as we know, it's the rich who are the powerful and who are able to make decisions for us. And so that's one area I just felt I couldn't compromise on.
Would it not have been possible to be an advocate for the poor as a member of Congress?
I think it's possible, and I think that, for example, Congressman Capter has done a beautiful job. I really believe that she's held steadfast to her values. I think a woman at that time and a person of color would have had a difficult time. And for me, having had children, my priority was to raise my children in a quality home.
Did you have a mentor as a young adult?
I did. I actually had several mentors. Some very strong women in the community. Ruth Garcia was a really strong community person in South Toledo, a neighborhood proponent. Maria Sue Campos, who was an awesome leader as well. I mean, she was a real strong advocate for the poor and for migrant workers. And also Aurora Gonzalez. Aurora Gonzalez was a very strong leader. She was I believe, the executive secretary for a Fortune 500 company in Toledo. And so each one had their own special gifts, and so they really mentored me a lot. Also say Valdemar Velasquez is also, I think, a really wonderful mentor, and he's done lots of wonderful things for the people who are economically disadvantaged and the workers in the area. So,
in fact, Baltimore has sat in that very chair for one of our interviews, and admired and respected him for decades for his hard work. Let's talk about you say 3 children.
3 children.
Can we talk about the 3 of them?
Sure.
And they're grown, and you have 1 grandchild and 1 on the way, I think you said.
Correct.
Talk about your 3 kids.
Well, Javier is my firstborn, Javier Roberto, and he is currently a master's level social worker working in Hollywood, California with homeless veterans. I'm very proud of him. I think it took him a while to discover what it was that he wanted to do, but I believe this is really his passion, and he's a wonderful, beautiful, spiritual person. My second child is Carmen, and Carmen is also really spiritually oriented and very focused on environmental issues. She spent 10 years living or 12 years living in the Big Island of Hawaii, taking care of 8 acres of land and being an organic farmer and off the grid, and survived on catchment water and solar power. And she just recently made her transition from one jungle to the next. She went from living off the grid to now being in Las Vegas with the granite countertops
abrupt
and
culture shock change there,
culture
isn't
shock,
it?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but she's true to her values and still working on having her own organic produce, and so she's working on how she might be able to market that in Las Vegas. And then lastly, my daughter Magdalena is a marathon runner and Zumba instructor, and got her degree from Haverford College in history and Latin American studies. She is currently supporting her husband, who is a captain in the Army and serving in the Pentagon at the moment. So they live in Virginia, and she's the one who has given us our first granddaughter, Liliana Maria, and another baby on the way in October.
Are you spoiling your granddaughter?
Very much.
That's your right.
That's my right.
That's what we're supposed to do.
Yes, very much.
Your husband's education required you to move a number of times. He wanted a degree as you did. Was that a problem for you and the kids to be moving a good deal?
I think with me being at home, having the privilege of being able to stay home as a housewife and a home mom, gave them, I think, some stability. We spent some time in Los Angeles, where he studied in the Department of Psychiatry. Later, we spent some time in Claremont, and then came back to Toledo, where he also got his degree in family practice medicine. You
did return to Toledo. What year was that? Was that in the 80s?
That was in the late 80s. That we came
Why
back.
did you come back to Toledo?
I think that we were missing my family, Margarita, my dad. My mother just had a heart attack. My really close friend, Sofia Quintero, was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And I think we wanted to have a place for our children where the life was not so busy like in the Los Angeles area. So we moved to we found a place in Springfield Township that had 8 acres so the kids could have their animals, the dogs, the chickens, the goats, and still be close to my family, my mother and father, and with Sophia. And so we took, family as being a number one, and friends as being a number one issue for us to return to Toledo.
Not to mention land in Ohio, a lot cheaper than land in California.
Oh my goodness, yes.
I can relate, coming back from California to Ohio, I did the same thing. And people always asking me, why would you leave the Golden State?
Yes.
And as you say, family is number one. Most Toledoans, I think, know that the heart of the Latino community is south of the downtown, Broadway being the core of it. Even though you relocated to Springfield Township, were you drawn to South Toledo?
Yes, I was always drawn to South Toledo. That's where I began working as a administrator for a neighborhood health clinic. And I also have many, many relatives. My mother's side of the family, Martinez, that tribe is probably 600. And so I just really felt connected and supported. And so my husband is a United Methodist, and we found a church on Broadway, Broadway United Methodist, where we began to go and to serve.
Driving in from Springfield
Correct.
On Sundays?
Correct.
Ultimately, though, you relocated to South Toledo, right?
Correct.
Your children at that point were older and it made the move a bit easier, I assume.
Yes. All the children had left, and so we were left with, big yard and big house and
goats.
Yeah, and just 2 rooms really that we occupied, the bedroom and the kitchen.
Didn't need it
so
all.
we just felt that we just needed to downsize, and so we moved to Broadway, close to the zoo, overlooking the river, and it still gives us lots of peace to see all that nature. Really, Toledo's got some beautiful assets: the river, the parks, the zoo, downtown. So we just felt really blessed to be able to be in this part of town.
Unfortunately, an awful lot of Toledoans don't fully appreciate the things that you just cited, but it is a marvelous place. At some point, you went into business for yourself. You opened an insurance agency, I think Allstate,
Correct.
In South Toledo. What motivated you to do that?
Well, I really enjoy being creative. And I had this building, and I thought, what business? And I had somebody talk to me about Allstate, and I thought, wow, what an opportunity here to help the people in the neighborhood with learning. I had to learn about property and casualty, but it also was an education for me to teach about the value of insuring your house, making sure that your home was the most valuable piece of asset that you have. Why not protect it? So it was a real privilege for me to work for that company.
So here's someone with a background as an LPN,
Right.
With a college degree in political science, no previous exposure to the insurance industry, launching an insurance business. Was it successful?
It was success. From my point of view, it was successful. And I'd probably still be there, but my father's health began to decline, and by then my mother had already passed away, and I really felt a calling to take care of my dad. And so I closed the business so that I could spend most of my time with my father.
And you also became even more involved at that point with the Latino community. You helped establish the Sofia Quintero Art and Cultural Center. What inspired you to do that?
Well, my friend was Sophia, and she was just so gifted in terms of education and language. She knew 4 languages: Spanish, Italian, English, and French. And to me, she also valued education a lot. And to me, I wanted to keep her memory alive. It's very important for me that we recognize our ancestors and our friends and not to forget who they were and what contributions they made in our lives and to the community. And so I really wanted to create something that would honor her. And at that time, my daughter, Carmen, had purchased the old Horn Hardware, and she was going off to Costa Rica and doing all kinds of traveling, and so she said, why don't you guys use it to do something? And so a friend of mine, Sylvia Muniz-Muchler, and I created the Sofia Quintero Center in that building, and we started out with teaching the people of the neighborhood and the general public about Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Deceased, which is a traditional Aztec celebration. And so we had our first opening on November 2nd.
In conjunction with Dia de los Muertos.
Yes.
Why is that such an important occasion?
That occasion is because it's a celebration of the life of the people in our ancestry, our loved ones, our friends. We don't want to forget who they were. The Aztecs have a theology, if you will, of believing that there is no end in life. You know, we pass through this state and then we transfer to another state. And so I think that's a beautiful way of looking at the process of dying and death, is that we're not forgotten, that our memories live on in the people that we touched. And by continuing that idea of a person's energy, if you will, being left behind through genetics and through memory, the celebration continues. Celebration of life continues.
Teaches also that there need be no fear of dying.
Exactly.
That really there's just another evolving
Correct.
state coming next. Have you always had an interest in the arts?
Actually, I became interested in the arts with my daughter, Carmen. My daughter was born with this really insightful, creative part of personality. And it's through her that really I began to appreciate the arts.
Is she an artist?
She is an artist.
What is her medium?
She does just about anything: painting, organic gardening. She recycles things and upcycles them, and so there's just all kinds of things.
Where does she get that? That come from you?
I don't think it comes from me. I can draw a stick person, you know, but.
Well, I can't even do that. So, why is art important? Why would like at the Quintero Center, the appreciation for the arts be so important to the Latino culture?
Well, first of all, I think art in general is very important because it's an education. It teaches us, you know, before man could write, they were drawing. And it teaches us history. It teaches us about the particular culture. When you go into caves and you find these different drawings of the animals and the weapons that were used and the groups of people, I mean, that's all art. And so I really think that for the Quintero Center, it's very important that our children learn that they receive gifts very early on, and to capitalize on these gifts and to encourage them to do the drawings and the paintings and the colors.
Tell us what occurs at the Quintero Center. I mean, do the kids, they just look at pretty pieces of art, or do they create them themselves?
They create them.
There are classes and so forth.
We do have classes. We currently also teach them about nature, and there's art in nature. I mean, the Creator created all of what we have, and the Creator was an artist. What does it mean to be create? So for the children to see how plants create something that then can be used in food or as food, as well as in drawings and in murals, and
now,
so.
are they taught and instructed in English?
in English and some in Spanish, depending on.
Do many of the youngsters come speaking only Spanish?
There are some that do, but most of them already have a working base of English.
How important do you think it is that the Latino children in our community are bilingual?
Well, I think it's very, very important. One, it provides them with an opportunity to have an experience of being able to travel outside of this country and know that, Spanish is spoken in Europe and Spain and also in South America. And also, where the children are using more of their brain than just, if they're able to speak one language. So the more languages anyone can learn, the more our brain is being used at its maximum capacity.
I think all children should be bilingual, quite honestly.
All children,
American
or trilingual.
Or trilingual, yeah.
We have my husband's relatives are of Swiss and German background, and when we visit them in Switzerland, they speak 3 or 4 languages. Mm-hmm. And it's nothing to them because that's part of their culture, because Switzerland is such a small country and it's surrounded by, Italy and all these different places that to them it's a benefit for their children to learn another language.
Exposure to that is so beneficial, mm-hmm. so enlightening, because as you know, and has been my experience, a lot of native-born U.S. children mm-hmm. have trouble expressing themselves in their primary language. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why that needs to be. Education, mm-hmm. again, is the core. That's a large part of what you're about, isn't it? Education.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And to imparting the positiveness of it. I just don't get where people think that just one language is sufficient. I think that we do a disservice to our entire country by promoting that concept. That if we can teach our children more than one language, we will help them be citizens of the world, not just citizens of the United States.
Now, I believe you were on the board of an organization called Heritage South. Mm-hmm. Is that still around?
No, Heritage South actually is no longer in existence, mm-hmm. But there is an organization called Broadway Corridor Coalition that
sort of an outgrowth of
is kind of like a group of various organizations and social service agencies in the South End that come together and share information. There's another group that's just also starting that's called Historic South, that is attempting to pick up that role where Heritage South is now. It's now gone. It used to be a community development corporation. And as you know, a lot of community development corporations, when the federal dollars dried up, they basically couldn't continue to survive.
We talked a little earlier about this gentleman, and I wanted to mention him once again, if I might. I know you've had a long friendship and relationship with Valdemar Velasquez, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. who founded the Farm Labor Organizing Committee all those years ago. Mm-hmm. What sort of influence has he had on your life? He may be perhaps along with yourself, the most recognizable Latino in our community, mm-hmm. and he's known nationally. Mm-hmm. What effect has he had on Maria Rodriguez Winter?
Well, first of all, I admire Valdemar tremendously. He is a person who is so committed, and he is very rarely steered from his vision. So I really admire the fact that he just stays on track, and that his commitment to the poor and his spiritual life is very connected to making a difference. And so years ago I had an opportunity to get to know him when I was, I think, maybe around 20, and he was just starting out his movement. And so I kind of followed what he did, and then also I had the privilege of working for him for a few years as his administrative assistant. So I do really admire what he does, and he's been a mentor for many, including myself.
Now, you mentioned that you worked for him for a time at Flock mm-hmm. As an office mm-hmm. assistant, but I believe your daughter Carmen also did some work, did she not, for Flock? And I read somewhere that she was even arrested once for going into the fields in North Carolina.
Right.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, you know, one of the things I always instilled in my children was to be givers. That in life, you know, there are lots of takers, but not enough givers. And that I think that it's important for them to participate in helping those who have less, because in the Bible it says, for those who have much, much is expected. And so I really, that particular year she came and she helped Baltimore in the summertime and went to North Carolina and participated and helped them organize as they were working to organize in the pickle fields. And I don't think it was tobacco, it was mostly pickles. And so
would that be Mount Olive?
Mount Olive Pickle Company. But I was really proud of her that she took that initiative to spend the summer.
Most parents, when they get a call that their child has been arrested, would think, oh my God. In this case, it sounds like it was almost a badge of honor. It
was a badge of honor, and I knew
others.
she was with Baltimore, and so I had nothing to fear.
You mentioned health care, health clinic. You worked for the Phlox Clinic for a time. Was getting adequate health care a major problem for Latino families who worked in the fields? I
think so, because they work such long hours and they come home and they're exhausted. Then they get up early in the morning, and so access to health care was a real difficulty. And so years ago I helped Baltimore get the mobile clinic to go out to the camps through St. Vincent's Hospital, and I think that continues even today.
Were the growers kind of reluctant to help? I mean, it seemed to me it'd be in their best interest to have healthy workers in the
Correct.
fields.
I think that, you know, once the growers were talked to, spoken to, asked for their permission, they were more than happy to allow the van to come in and to be of service.
How has that changed over the years, Maria, from the 70s when Baltimore got Phlox started to where we are today? What is the plight or the condition or of the migrant workers?
Well, I think that's a better question to ask of Baltimore, because he's still in the trenches. But what I see is that because of his efforts and because of the efforts of the United Farm Workers in California, and also the American people being more aware of where their vegetables and fruits come from, I believe there's been some significant improvements. There's always room for growth, though.
What challenges do you think face Toledo's Latino community today? I mean, it's obviously from your years of involvement, the Quintero Center, all these other things you've been involved with. Conditions, I would think, have improved. But what challenges remain?
I think the challenge that remains is that our population is growing significantly. Our population is younger. More babies are being born, and the people who have been in control of our government for the last 400 or 500 years are, I think, a little concerned about the direction the country is going in, and I see more people out of fear being critical of the Latino immigrants that are coming. And, you know, we're seeing it on TV with some of the comments that are being made by the politicians that are running. And this fear, I think, is detrimental to our country.
This whole controversy over immigration, is that helping or hurting Latinos in our city?
Well, I think it's hurting. It's not something that is in our city very openly discussed, but I think that there are salient issues that affect the Latino population.
Do we need to recruit, and again, maybe this gets back to your background with your political science degree, do we need to recruit more Latinos to run for public office in Toledo?
I think that there's definitely a need to do that.
We've had a few.
We've had a few, and I think that for those who have that calling, they really need to be a part of the political process.
A lot of folks are watching the career of Anita Lopez, for example, who's done quite well in that regard. But it would seem to me there's a need for more.
Correct.
Whether they be district councilmen or at-large councilmen, doesn't matter to me. I just think that there ought to be more involvement and step forward, and as you have done, willing to serve in whatever capacity suits you and the community the best. Will we see a Latino mayor of Toledo anytime soon in our lifetimes, perhaps?
Well, anything is possible. Anything is possible. It's a matter of whether or not the citizenry is open to that.
As we sit here in August of 2015, you still got a couple weeks. You want to declare your candidacy for mayor, but you could do so.
Thank you.
A lot of folks would think you'd be an excellent choice.
Well, thank you so much. But I really feel that in these last, you know how our life goes from being young, teenagers, marriage life, now we're in grandparenthood. And so how much more life do we have is up to the Creator. But in this last phase of my life, I'm choosing to spend that time in becoming more attuned with my ancestry and my roots. My mother and grandmother were curanderas, and so I'm exploring the whole curandera aspect, where they're indigenous healers, and so that's my calling.
How far back have you been able to reach into your family's history?
I did a National Geographic search of my maternal side and my paternal side, and based on that documentation, on my mother's side of the family, the ancestry crossed the Bering Strait 15,000 years ago, and on my father's side of the family, they crossed 10,000 years ago. So we're truly indigenous Americans. And so for me, tracing that history more recently, my dad and my grandmother used to say we came from Apache roots, and so I want to really explore that. Now National Geographic, I think, has testing that can really actually help you discover which tribe you came from, and so that's one of the things that I would like to do. So
it's a wonderful way to spend this part of your life. It really is. As you look back on what preceded, what do you consider your greatest achievements? I have to ask you to be immodest here if that's what's required, but what do you think your greatest accomplishments are as you look back?
Well, I think from a community perspective, and looking back at some of the organizations that still exist, I would say the university organization, where they're still promoting inclusivity and bringing in Latinos into the university, was probably one of my proudest moments of accomplishments there. From a family perspective, I would say my children and my husband, very proud of who they are and what they do in their respective communities and how they're giving to our country. With respect to local, I'm very proud of what the Sofia Quintero Center is doing and how it's repurposing some of the land that's been vacated because of, you know, the economic downturn, and what it's doing to beautify the neighborhood and beautify the city. So I can say that, you know, those are the things that I'm very
Speaking
proud
of beautifying the city, one thing we haven't talked about is the beautiful mural that you were a part of. Can you tell us about that a bit?
Well, there's several really, I think, fabulous murals that have been put up in the city. The one with Martin Luther King and Cesar Chavez, I think, is absolutely fabulous. Mario Torero from California did a beautiful job with the students at Bowling Green State University. The artist who did the Alberto Marin, who's a visiting artist from Puebla, Mexico, who did the beautiful angel on the side of one of the buildings.
Guadalupe.
The Guadalupe tile work that went up on the building was created because there was prostitution that was taking place along Broadway, and there was some space between two buildings, and that's where they would take their customers. And so what I thought about doing, the carpentry skills came in, is that we build a wall made out of bricks that sealed the two buildings, and then on that wall we put in a beautiful painted tiles of the Virgin of Guadalupe for the women to begin to think about the spiritualness of and the sacredness of their bodies. And then below that we put the 10 Commandments, and within 2 years prostitution was gone along that Broadway area. So to me, art can make a big impact, more than lecturing somebody. It gives them an opportunity to think, what are they doing? And so that was, I think, something that was really impactful.
Speaking of a variety of talents, it's one we haven't talked about with yours, and I read somewhere that you took carpentry classes at once upon a time. What was that all about?
I've always been fascinated with, from the time I was a child, I tear things apart and build them again, and I don't know.
I just tore things apart. I didn't build them again. But you had a fascination with working with wood and so forth? Working with wood and how buildings are structured. And so my husband would say, if he'd leave, and I'd say, oh, honey, you're not going to believe what I did. He said, what? I just bought a building. He said, you did what? So he says, I'm afraid of leaving, for fear that you're going to buy all these buildings. So I just felt fascinated by some of the history of these buildings and what went on, by the various previous generations, and actually repurposing them, like the Horn Hardware, for example. That was a perfect example of, history that took place there at one point by the Horn family, and now it is the Jose Martinez Gallery, so Memorial Gallery. So I am fascinated by working on structures that we can repurpose. You actually did some of the hammering and sawing at these places.
Oh yes, I still have some scars left over from some of the things that I've done.
Now, you've received a lot of richly deserved awards, and I'm probably going to embarrass you, but I'm going to ask you to talk about them anyway. And the first one is the Diamante Award. Can you tell us about that?
Well, it's really an honor to be given that award. It is given to somebody who's done something special in the community, whether it be in the art, education, business community. And Margarita de Leon has been very active in making sure that people who do things in the community are rewarded in some fashion, and Diamantes is one of the beautiful ways in which an expression of gratitude is given. So I'm really honored that gratitude was given. That's wonderful.
And in 2003, the Allstate Insurance Company gave you its Hands in the Community Award, and I'm sure they don't hand those out like confetti, that you earned that. Yeah. And then in 2005, you received the Martin Luther King Community Service Award. Obviously all deserved, and I'm sure that you found them very gratifying personally.
I do. I'm humbled by that, because I really feel that it's part of my nature. And to be awarded for something that is part of your nature, I feel a little, well, first of all, gratitude for it, but at the same time, I know are many people who do many things and are not awarded. So I'm humbled by it.
People like yourself do not undertake the things you do with an eye toward awards. The true reward is inside, I would think, personal, a gratifying sense of accomplishment that you keep inside.
Correct. Yeah. It's the smile on the face. It's holding someone's hand when they're passing away and knowing that you're there with them as they're making that transition. Those are the rewards that, to me, are really in my heart.
Do you still have things you feel you would like to accomplish?
Yes.
You're what, 65? 60,
I'm 65.
65 years old. Still young.
I think
From
so.
my perspective. You have things on your list that you'd like to get accomplished?
Yes.
Still with your life. Can you talk about
Yes.
that?
Well, I really would like to continue on the path of being a curandera, again, an indigenous healer. And so I've started that with having the classes. I took some classes in July at the University of New Mexico with about 150 other students who are learning the techniques.
You went there for the class?
Yes, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, who are learning the techniques of curanderismo. And I plan to go to Cuernavaca in December and study with a physician there and other healers to be able to integrate this healing with the Western
What
healing.
distinguishes indigenous healing from traditional, what we would call traditional?
Yes. Well, traditional, as you know, uses a lot of like X-rays and all kinds of machines and medicines that are chemically made by pharmaceutical companies, where traditional healing uses more plants and herbs and touch and listening. We believe that a lot of the illnesses in society are caused by the pressures of society, and it's caused by the way in which we were raised and the way in which we perceive ourselves. So oftentimes it's what a person's been exposed to, not just environmentally, but also in their home and through exposure to different traumas, wars, accidents, death, things of that sort that really makes an impact on a person that then causes an illness to set in. And so we use a lot of listening techniques, touch.
It sounds to me like the whole concept of retirement is not on your radar screen. Would that
What
be
is
fair
that?
to say? You don't know what that is,
No,
and I understand that.
Well, you know, and I'm not the type of person who's going to go to a senior center and play bingo. That's not who I am. You know, I'll be happy if one day I just pass doing something that I'm loving to do, whether it be walking through nature. You know, I've had this beautiful opportunity to visit the Alps in Switzerland and walk through all those beautiful mountains and just be in touch with nature. And that to me is a real opportunity to be really connected with the Creator.
You plan to do more travel?
I do. One of the places I have not yet gone to that's on my bucket list is China. So I would love to go to China and trace some of the routes that my ancestors took.
Start planning, make it happen. I know you will.
Yes.
As you look back on your life, Maria, any regrets?
Oh, I'm sure we all have regrets. And there was a time in my life when I was just a little spitfire. So I do regret sometimes of just being too independent and not being a very good listener. But over time, I believe that I've worked on that.
It's all part of the maturation
Correct.
process, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Someday, what do you hope when your children are the age you are now, they will consider your legacy to be?
Well, I would hope that my legacy would be one of caring and loving. Caring and loving to the people in our lives and also to our world.
Mm-hmm. Maria, time is precious, and we thank you so much for the gift of yours today.
Thank you.
And we thank you for the gift of your time as well and your continuing interest in the Sight and Sound Video History Series at the Toledo Lucas County Public Library. Remember, keep reading and keep learning.
Thank you.
Thank you.